Cook frog shoes. Okay, now today this is a little bit of a different one. It's quite an interesting analogy, the cook frog, in the sense that the theory is, and really I don't even know how they came up with this, and to be honest I don't actually want to know thinking about it, but if you put a frog in water and you slowly turn up the heat, you can eventually kill the frog. Whereas if you threw the frog into hot water, it would immediately jump out. Okay. So the reason that I want to talk about that analogy is an awareness of this slow grade eating away without people actually realizing it's actually happening. And that's why, I was talking about, how I was talking about the black swan shoes and, like getting clear. It's just what's in our environment. It's a slow, insidious cooking that happens to people, to whether it be on emotional level or a physical level, that I would like to draw people's attention to. Now, I'm not saying that there's this deep, dark disaster thing going on, okay? I think that half the time people don't even think about what it is they're manufacturing, what it is that they're actually doing, and they're just putting it out there with a profit line, and they're just going, boom, it's going to increase profits, so we'll just do this, without really realizing the kind of level of impact that it actually might have. So it might be, in this example, I will give, say, for example, I'm going to go with sugar. Let's go with sugar, peeps. Someone was telling me the other day, and I can't remember the exact stat, that in the old days, yes, it's a herbal lady that I know. She's really, really into all the natural bush stuff and walking and stuff. And she was telling me that we would have, was it a kg of sugar, if that, or 500 grams of sugar or something a year. And it's not the first time I've heard this. In the old days, like if you were a natural hunter-gatherer, the amount of sugar that you find in the bush would be rare, like in the berries and the fruits, etc. So through evolution, she was telling me that, when you did find sweet stuff, the body was then trained to eat as much as possible to store up on that sugar, because of the seasons, you wouldn't actually get that very often, right? So it was a rare find to find sugar, and that was in the form of fructose. It wasn't refined sugar. That's another point. Okay, now you've got, like, literally, I remember picking up, there's some sugar documentary, and I don't even think I watched all of it, but there was part of it that it struck me, and it was like something about a tuna can had the equivalent of 3 teaspoons, one of those small ones. It wasn't even a big one, had the equivalent of 3 teaspoons of sugar in there, and that we have the equivalent of, because there's sugar in all the cakes and lollies now, then it's refined sugar, so it's even more concentrated. It's the white one is actually bleached. It's like the bleached flour. White flour is actually bleached to make it that white, apparently. You might go and validate these facts, actually. Just go and get your Sherlocks on, make sure that that's accurate. But from what I remember, that was like, wow, I was staggered. I mean, they put bleach in our food and we eat it. How can they not think that's not going to have an impact on human health is beyond me. But just that aspect of doing that in the food chain immediately raises the question mark of, is that really right? Why are you doing that anyway? I'm not even sure why they do it. Why do they do that? Maybe if someone knows, you can put it in the comments box, but I find that quite bizarre. Why would you bleach it? Is it because it just looks better? Don't know. Does it increase the shelf life? Maybe. Or it might be to get rid of bugs. Maybe. Who knows? But anyway, the long and short of it is now we're eating far more sugar than we ever have before, but we've still got that genetic wiring for seeing sugar and wanting it, because we've got that. This is what this lady was saying, was the evolutionary process of, well, we see sugar tastes good, it's also addictive, and so it's a socially condoned, even promoted vice, if you like. So was it intent to destroy humans? No. Absolutely, I'm quite sure it wasn't. It was, first of all, it was all supposed to be a big treat, wasn't it? it was have a dessert, have a lolly. You did really well. And then it was, now you've got bigger treats and bigger lollies, and now you've got bakeries, and now you've got all these things that we didn't have before, and it's in ice creams, and it's in lollies, and it's in baking, and even in the savory stuff. I mean, there's so unbelievable amounts of sugar in the savory stuff, and you're just like, the body is not designed to sustain that kind of level of sugar. And sugar in that amount, in that quantity, is actually toxic to the body. It switches off the immune system. So as soon as you put sugar in, it turns it off, and I think it's it switches it off for like 4 hours or something. So I often worry when people say to me, oh, well, when I'm sick, I'm just going to, pig out on chocolate and ice cream. And I'm like, that's probably the worst thing to be taking right now, Please don't do the sugar thing. But we become cooked frogs. This is what I'm trying to get about here. And that's just like food. That's just sugar. And that is a socially accepted vice. You can buy it in the supermarkets. You go to the cafe and you have, there's shops that just sell lollies, and chocolate, whatever it is. Now, I'm not saying, doom and gloom to all of that. Just say yes, but just moderate. Like, just don't go so hard on it. And be aware of, like, if you're going to have something, instead of having the white refined sugar, maybe you want to do the raw, untainted organic. So it hasn't got all the pesticides, and it hasn't got all the bleach in it, and it hasn't got all the crap in it. And that you probably don't need anywhere near as much. Or maybe you do something like stevia instead of, because that is, plant-based, and it hasn't got all the nasty stuff in it that's going to be a toxic thing for you. That's just sugar. Right, but now with Lipton, Dr. Lipton, you remember I was talking about the Lipton shoes. If you haven't watched that video, you might want to go watch that. Your environment dictates the health of the cell, and we are just a whole bunch of cells bunched together, right? So if we've got an environment that is toxic, and we're going outside of the food chain now. I'm talking about it could be environmental, it could be, I don't know, they put sprays on our foods, whatever, but that's still, it could be toxic people, it could be toxic government, it could be toxic medicines, it could be toxic, even, people can go too extreme on the herbal stuff and go too hard on the things that they thought would be beneficial, and it could be toxic. I don't know, but it's that whole environment of, if you're constantly being told that that's the way it's done, then that's what you'll end up having. It becomes accepted. So I'll give you another example, which is not just, it's not just what are the words that are being said around you by various people, whether it's through media, whether it's through people that you're living with, whether it, your friends, your whatever, that toxic environment can cook the frog. It can poison the cell to the point where it doesn't love itself anymore. It thinks it's awful. It thinks it doesn't deserve to live. It thinks, that in order to be accepted, I'll have to do X, Y, and Z in order to be part of that. It poisons the cell. It's cooked frog. That's what it is. And it's that slow, multiple avenues. It's not just one thing. Like with the frog, it is literally just the heat being turned up. But in our environment, we've got multiple ways of being cooked. And it's no wonder the systems are struggling and collapsing. The cells can't sustain if you've got poison food and you've got toxic environment. Be it through whatever, it's toxic media, toxic, people, toxic friends, toxic environment as in literally the environment, or if it's the toxic food, the system, after a while, it just starts going, woo, this is too much for me to bear. I can't take this anymore. And it collapses. So it forms in dis-ease within the body. It forms within mental and emotional dysfunction, and, being out of whack, out of balance. And, like, I'll give you another example, completely separate, but it gives you an analogy again of how it works. Like when I went back to South Africa the one time on holiday, I had to hire a car, and it had 5 different alarms on it. And it cut out when I was on the highway, one of them, and I didn't know which one it was. And all these cars were flying past, and they drive really fast on the tolls there. And it was actually putting me in danger because I couldn't even get the car off the side of the road. And I was right in the middle of the highway, 6 lanes. It was full on, and it was quite scary, if I'm honest. And I was like, man, how did it get this bad? And like, I went to friends' houses, and they had barbed wire, electric fences, bars on the windows. They've got guns in their pockets, ladies with guns in their purses. They don't go out with all their jewelry in case it gets whipped. It was really quite full on. And I was like, how did it get this bad? Like, I went to university, in Durban in South Africa, and we didn't have any of that. Like, I had a crowbar that hooked onto the pedal and onto the steering wheel, and that was the most security that I had to have. And it was like a cooked frog scenario. They just, oh yep, that's just how it is. And so it's that slow, insidious, dare I say, pollution of like, and then people accept it like that's the norm. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be like this. Like, we don't even have, like, it depends on where you live, obviously, but that's actually not how it needs to be. It would be there because it's now become accepted that that's what it is. But it was a slow, insidious thing. Like, after so many years, it was just, and a little, and a little, and another, and another, and another thing. Now that was when I had gone back that time. That was just the accepted thing. Everybody had like 4 or 5 alarms, apparently. It was just a normal thing. And I'm like, well, it's actually not that normal. It's actually quite unusual. And I quite like that it's unusual for me. But it's an awareness, like when you come back out, when you're out of that pot for so long, right? You go into that pot and it's damn hot, and you go, guys, this is damn hot, man. Do you want to stay in this pot? Like, is this how you want it? So be aware. It's back to that awareness thing of like, what's my cook frog? What's being slowly turned up? And sometimes it will have a black swan where it's a negative driver, and sometimes it's not a negative. I mean, sometimes it's just that's never been questioned. It's just how it's been done. And it's like, well, maybe we need to say, well, no, actually, let's change that. Let's not have cooked frog. We don't really like it. It's ultimately, it's going to cause harm. It's going to kill the frog, right? So let's create a healthier environment, like the Lipton shoes. What are the Lipton shoes that we do want to have? Let's spot what the cooked frog syndromes are. Who's wearing them, and why is it happening? And being aware of it, you can go, well, I buy into being one of those cooked frogs, or I choose not to. Let me step out of that. Actually, I'm going to get out of this hot water before it actually nukes me, and I'm going to take my family out, and the ones that I love and I care about. But half of them don't even know that it's happening. It's a cooked frog. They just do it slowly but surely, and it's like one day they go, wow, there's a lot of bodies in this water, right? So let's not be one of those cooked frogs. Let's go, okay, no. That slow, insidious disservice is just not key. Not going to help anybody. Let's just not do it. So what is it? It'll be different for different people. Interesting. An unusual pair of shoes to wear or not wear. Ideally. Okay. All right. I hope you found that useful. Your shoes, your path, your way. Healthy shoes on your path, on your way to where you want to go. Okay. That's what it's all about, ladies. Hope you enjoyed it. Interesting one today, wasn't it? thumbs up, like, share, subscribe, please, if you don't mind. And, you know, pull on into the Facebook group if you're not there already, and we can pick up from there. Hope you enjoyed that. Love you all. Namaste.